I've been doing music for a long time, and for a long time I had a focused vision and a unique style I didn't have to think about, but it slipped from my grasp over time, and by the time I noticed it was already too late. I've gotten to that tipping point lately where I've gotten so far along this path that I forgot where I came from, and why I set off in this direction in the first place. Something pure and uninfluenced was gradually over time swayed, corrupted, and pulled in different directions until it was unrecognisable. I've started to reverse engineer this process, but before I get into that I want to talk about this phenomenon a little more. You start out clueless, fumbling your way through everything until you have something. It might not be pretty, but it's yours, and that's enough. A little more of this process, and you eventually learn more through your own experience, but you're still shooting in the dark. To start at all, you've most likely been inspired by something, so you turn to those inspirations for guidance. You take cues from it and emulate it in your own way. You obviously lack the skills to do this, but at this point that doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, it's beneficial. It allows your emulation to mutate into your own style. You continue along this path, but eventually you require something that you just can't figure out on your own. This is the beginning of the end if you're not careful. You ask people for advice, or just Google it these days, let's just be honest. And this marks the beginning of external influence infiltrating your process. All well and good for now, but eventually, somewhere along the way, you start taking other people's thoughts too seriously. And just like that, where you're currently at isn't enough anymore. You start comparing yourself to others, taking notes, learning the right way to do things. This is where you start to lose your identity, where creation for the sake of it starts to give way to external validation. You'll lose your edge, you'll start to conform to the norm, bars, and nothing will be enough. That's where I ended up. So let's get back to my return to form experiment. My first course of action was to return to all of the songs and artists that first got me into music. I compiled them into a playlist as best as I can. I used to listen to some obscure stuff that isn't on Spotify, a lot of it actually, now I think about it, and made sure it was the majority of what I listened to. I did this to get back into all the music that shaped me, sure, but also to analyse everything that stuck with me on this profound level, to see if there was any rhyme, reason, through line for it all, or maybe just to pick up on things I'd forgotten over time. I learned quite a few things from this. They're as follows. I'm more of a composer than a songwriter. The majority of my musical experience was in the compositional bracket. Songwriting is, in the grand scheme of things, something I'm pretty new to, so I might as well play to my strengths and lean more into that side. I really like ambience and music that sets a mood. Mood and atmosphere are the lens I see music through. For songwriters this genre, but I never really liked that approach. It's too rigid and inhuman. The human experience is made up of a rich palette of moods, and to limit those arbitrarily is an unnecessary handicap in my opinion. I care more about evoking feelings than complexity, theory or structure. That stuff tends to fall in place naturally if you follow the feel. I used to really like experimental weird stuff and lost touch with that part of me over time. I always knew this, but only looking back do I realise how experimental I really was. I mean, just listen to the stuff I was writing at the time. Recently I've felt less and less inspired until that clicked. It's because over time my listening habits have gotten less inspired. Even then it's by no means ever been pedestrian, but my early musical diet consisted of some really wild and out there stuff. Stuff that really inspires me to write. I really like sound design, especially glitchy electronic noises. I used to spend hours just making sounds. Something I don't do as much lately. This works very well in tandem with my other ambient composer's tendencies. I like low-tuned guitars a lot, even if they're not being used to be heavy. Something about that low rumble was just pleasing to the ear. This one started for me around the same time as my love for experimental electronic sounds when I was 12. Around the same time I started to have an interest in making music actually. I wonder where that influence came from. I'm a big fan of groove-based guitar and drum parts, again see previous comment about Doom, but also my first memory of guitar parts standing out to me was Wes Borland, an influence I haven't lost touch with actually. And probably some other stuff I missed. So the Venn diagram I ended up with was ambient, experimental, electronic, rock, / metal. Unsurprising, but it's good to see it definitively proven I guess. I mentioned this in other videos, but I've also taken as much time offline as possible. The internet is full of people pulling you in all different directions, and it's easy to lose what makes you special if you don't keep it in check. Obvious point I know, but it bears repeating. And that's about it. As of writing this, I'm still in the beginning of this experiment, so my findings and effects are limited for now, but time will take care of that.